Abstract Transmissions.
All right. Thank you for coming on to Abstract Transmissions today. We have Krystal Hicks from JobTalk. And, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Good to
thanks.
have you on.
The pleasure is all ours, right? That's how we say things in grammatical correctness.
Oh, yeah.
That's
we
that's how
don't
it
have
works.
to be PC today.
I'm working on grammatical correctness because I stumble over my words a lot, I find. And, being that this is now my drive in life, I feel like I should do less of that and a little less talking over people.
Okay.
Which I'm doing right now. So
No,
tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself and how kind of JobTalk came to be.
Sure. I was born in Portsmouth, grew up in Dover. I'm a seacoaster at heart, so kind of stayed local.
Same.
And it's kind of a nice area. When you're a kid, you're like, God, I'm gonna get out of here. And then you get older and you're like, this isn't that bad. It's kind of like, it's super white. It's not as diverse as I would like.
Yep.
But the environment in general is kind of a great place to grow up. And I live back in Portsmouth now, so it's an awesome area. But went to UNH, stayed local, and studied abroad, but kind of came back and was a journalism major and graduated from UNH in 2007 when the economy was falling apart. Thank God for bartending. And,
Right.
literally
Flipping tables, right?
Yeah. Stayed in that for about a year after graduation just to be safe.
Because when things get bad, people drink a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot.
It was, and I didn't realize that at the time, but it totally kept the bills paid. So
Sure.
I kind of told myself, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 1 year. I'm freelancing on the side, just writing some content for, websites and restaurants in town. And I said to a friend that I lived with at the time, I was like, how did you get into Liberty Mutual? She's got this great job and, she didn't go through college or anything. So she was like, I went to this staffing agency. And I was like, what is that? And so I actually went into Office Team in Portsmouth, which is still there. It's a Robert Half company. And basically walked in and was just like, hey, I have a degree and I can write. Do you guys have anything? And this is back in the day when you couldn't be on your parents' insurance.
Right.
Once you were done with school. So I was 21, 22 with no health insurance. And, you're like,
I
God,
fell
need
right
benefits.
into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that time zone, yeah.
And now you can be 26. Like, you can be on your parents' insurance till you're 26. So it's such a privilege now,
for a
right?
little while, but we'll
see.
see.
What happens.
Bum, bum, bum.
Is that another podcast? Yeah, it's another episode.
Sound of
Fear factor,
impending
health
doom.
insurance. So, that's kind of what drove me. And I was like, I should be using this degree. I was paying off my student loans, writing those checks. And I walked into the staffing agency. They were great. And they said, we don't really have anything that's like writing related, but we have an admin position. So if you're interested, you've got the right customer service experience from bartending and, the right personality. So I kind of fell backwards into the employment sector. And I had no idea what temp agencies did. I didn't know what the employment sector even was. You can't major in recruiting in college. So I had never even been exposed to this type of field. And so very quickly, I started to find it really fascinating how hiring decisions even were made and how things happened and why did this guy not get the job? He was so much more qualified than this guy, and like, what were those factors that led to this person getting, it was just so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
There's a lot of psychology and everything that goes behind
Yeah.
There's
it,
a ton of
for
that.
sure.
I think people just always think like, oh, I've got to be the most qualified person. And, jobs are my job. And I will tell you that after about 12 years of being in this sector,
That doesn't matter always.
Yeah. And it's funny because the best candidate rarely gets the job. It's usually just a great candidate that knows how to stand out from all the other great candidates.
Yep.
And personality and likability can really overshadow lack of work experience.
Same thing
So
with selling stuff to people. They buy
sure.
from people who they like.
trust and like.
Yes.
And
Yep.
exactly.
It's going to be the same thing during an interview. So you're selling yourself, and if they like and trust you, then
Exactly.
you're the guy for the job, right?
Exactly. So this was all so new to me. And I loved the coaching aspect, especially when new grads would come in. And so I started to think about career services. I didn't even realize it was a thing. And so I actually started, after about 2 years at the firm, I became a staffing manager, was focusing on accounting and finance specifically. So I placed accountants, financial analysts. Those were the people that I worked with companies to find. And essentially found a role at what was Hesser College in Portsmouth, which was a community college. They had a career services advisor position
My mother
open.
went to that college.
Did she really?
Yes.
Yeah. It was a satellite office. There weren't any dorms or anything, but it was a really cool, quote unquote campus. And it was great for me because it was that perfect transition. I was already used to working with the public, people who were older than me, had more experience than me. But now they were coming in and they needed my expertise on the market. And so it just became this really great place. And they paid for my master's, which was awesome. So was able to kind of chip that away. And then, and then UNH came calling, and I actually was able to fall backwards into my alma mater on their employer relations side. So bringing employers to campus. And then 4 years later, I was director of career services at UNH and throwing all the job fairs, still working really closely with students, making sure that employers knew how to hire our grads. And then Lindt Chocolate was one of my favorite employers. They would come to campus and, bring tons and tons and tons of truffles. And I just always thought they were such a cool place. Yeah. And the corporate recruitment manager that I worked with, when she would come to recruit, she left the company. And probably 6 months later, they called me and just said, hey, we'd love to talk to you about this role. We've known about you and that you've worked with our, company before.
Sure. Well, that's great.
Yeah. So it was really, I've been really, really fortunate to network my way into pretty much every job I've ever had. And so
here.
Yeah. And so Lindt was the corporate space though. So Lindt was really a big shift for me going back into, financially it was like, you don't work in higher ed for the money. You work in higher ed and you work in education in general because you love what you do.
Right.
Yep.
But good God, I needed to make
shame
some money.
Because it's I think a shame that we're paying, this is my personal belief.
Teachers, social workers,
such
peanuts.
Little money comparison to football entertainment stars. Like, where are the priorities of society? Like, I get entertainment's a thing, keeps people from, drinking themselves to death or putting a gun in the mouth. But and sometimes why? But the factor is that these people are the fabric of the next generation of the continuity of human civilization, right? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Because these are future, society builders.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And we're just like, fuck their education, right? Trash fire.
$35,000, you should be happy with that. And it's like,
no, you can't live on
here.
that. That's it.
Especially here, especially in the Seacoast and in New Hampshire.
Oh,
it is
bingo.
so expensive.
Totally.
And as automation moves in, it continues to decimate. And this is where my interest, this is why I was like, awesome, Justin. Yes, I would love to talk to somebody in this because a big thing that we've been discussing frequently, just as I've gathered more information and drank the Yang Kool-Aid, was automation, how much of an impact it has been, and how it's basically made everybody think that it was immigrants, and that's kind of how Donald Trump got elected. That really, in reality, it's automation and certain, not necessarily completely automation, but automation decimates the one main income for most of families in Detroit, and then the rest of the surrounding stores are impacted by that manufacturing plant going out of business and whatnot. But then you also, on the other turn, have all the malls and retail positions, which is the next in line.
Oh yeah, brick and
and
mortars
those are
suffering.
brick and mortars going away because Amazon's just taking that money right to the top and not paying anything in taxes. 20 billion in
it's crazy.
profit and zero in taxes.
Absolutely. And it's funny you bring up brick and mortar because working at Lindt, it was so interesting to see the 60 wholly owned Lindt chocolate stores, right, that there are nationwide. And it was so interesting also to work at the U.S. headquarters for Lindt because we have manufacturing there. So right in Stratham, which most people don't realize, that's the U.S. headquarters. So there's 1,200 people there.
Wow.
There's a 500,000 square foot production facility. They make 3 billion truffles a year right in Stratham, New Hampshire.
No.
Nope. And it's right next to Timberland, Bauer. It's like that little industrial park. So what was really interesting was, yes, coming to the corporate recruitment side, it was awesome. They wanted me to come on board and get their employer branding up and running. They had no career site. It was, there was a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And the crazy part, though, was seeing the manufacturing side, and actually as this market has shifted, that pendulum swings so quickly, right? It was very much an employer's market when the bubble burst in 2008, 2010.
Yep. So
bad. Everybody was laying off. When I was in staffing, for every job order that I would have to fill, I must have had 400, 500 candidates. It was crazy. And so now you see that pendulum swing, and probably around 2013, 2014, it started to balance out a little bit, and it just kind of felt healthy, right? Most people are getting jobs, but there's still a little bit of, struggle in finding the right talent and all this. And then that pendulum just kept swinging so far on the other side. And now you have a candidates market where it was impossible to find people to work.
Yeah.
In manufacturing especially.
Right.
And so you're having to pay more, right? You're having to get more competitive. You're having to, I mean, it was just nuts. We would have other manufacturing facilities posting like almost those like political lawn signs. They would start posting lawn signs at the entrance of the industrial park where Lint and Timberland and Bauer are. And it would say, we'll pay you $18 an hour. If they're only paying you $14 an hour or 15, whatever it was.
Right. Trying to pick up
just
those.
Unbelievable. You would have people not showing up for work.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And then they would just quit because they just went and took this other job. Truck drivers. My dad, who passed away when I was 20, and he was amazing and the most like blue collar, like phenomenal, just he's the dad that like deserves awards, you know. But he was a truck driver, and I remember him struggling sometimes to find. He always had at least 2 jobs, and so it's crazy to me to think about the fact that truck drivers are so in demand right now to the point where businesses can't even get their goods from their distributors to their customers on time because there's a shortage of CDL licensed truck drivers.
Well, and the problem with that is all the restrictions, all the stuff that they have on them, and they put them through the ringer, and those guys work their asses off. But then they also know, a lot of them know they're going to be replaced because they see what's coming down the pipeline. The truck driver is going to be gone in 2 to 3 years because of automation. The Teslas are literally, that's the entire market gone away.
They've got to stop killing people first. They got to stop like running people over and catching on fire. Still in the pilot phase, but it could be.
2 to 3 years, or you think like 15? I'm seeing like 20.
No. This is a lot sooner than people think.
Really?
Because every time they kill a person, they have an accident. That 97 percentile just became 99.999998. And every time the accident happens, it perfects it that much better. So, of course, that's not a good thing to happen, but that's only going to happen a handful of times before it's perfected. And then once you have all of these different censored cars on the market, they've already tested it out, and they've had a car successfully go from point A to point B. And now the companies, you got to understand, these companies see an immense amount of money to dump all of their money into it because of the billions of savings. And drivers that don't get sick, that don't harass other people,
Cars
that don't have diabetes, people don't need to sleep. Well, that's the thing. We don't need them to go 75 anymore. They can go 45, but nonstop.
Nonstop, yeah. It'll be interesting.
And it's going to be safer, and the reaction times are better. And when they can't have an issue, they have somebody step in like a pilot drone, and he does it with a controller, which is just... Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think that people aren't really prepared for, but these companies like Amazon and whatnot are like, oh, absolutely in 2 years, because every year we don't is every year we're losing money. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure that happens as quick as possible. And same with Uber, they're saying, which is scary. I mean, for a lot of people in a lot of positions.
I think most people don't even realize, like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think most of us live in our bubble, and we go to our job, and we come home, and we go back to our job, and we come home. And
Guilty.
So, like.
Guilty,
So being at Lint was the first time I ever even saw anything like this. I had never even thought that this was an issue. And it was such a complete opposite flip from 10 years ago when it was so hard to find a job. And now it's so hard to find the right person.
Right.
And so, so then that pretty much brings me up to present day. I had started taking clients. I missed the counseling aspect of, career coaching and career counseling. And I had just continued to take clients part-time through word of mouth referrals, people basically being like, oh, hey, my cousin's looking for a job. Will you talk to them? I told them you might be able to help. And so it just kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, I should really be doing this full time, and I was just, after 3.5 years, back in corporate, I was like, all right, I've conquered every aspect of this market that I've wanted to: staffing, career counseling. I even worked at the jail for 3 years doing pre-release employment counseling, like one morning a week, which was super cool. Got to build a curriculum right in Stratford County, so it was local, my community, right? Wanted to give back in some way.
Absolutely, that's huge.
It was awesome.
I think that's really awesome to do.
It was great, and so it was just something that I was like, you know what, this is something that I think when I always talk to my clients so much about understand what you value. And when I took that job at Lint, I was super financially motivated. I had student loans, right? No one in my life has ever had money. Like, it is, like, you grow up financially motivated when you have no money.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You're like, I remember what it's like to save cans. And like, I went to the school when like everybody was on free lunch, right? Like, you just remember those days, and you're like, wait, I need to make money.
Right.
And then you get to a point where you kind of balance out, and I'm very, very fortunate where Lint was an awesome move for me financially. And I'm not married. I don't have kids. I sold the house that I owned, and I love having almost no overhead, right? So For me, it was really that perfect moment to be like, you know what, I should just save this money. And I saved up enough money where I was like, okay, I can either throw money down on like a condo or something, or I can start this business. And so I gave my VP of HR probably about a year's notice and kind of told her I was transitioning, and it was great. I was able to backfill myself. You know,
that's awesome.
Does the inner feminist in me love the fact that I had to backfill myself with 2 men? Yes. You know,
That's
my
great.
job took 2 people to fill.
Yes, we need more women running the world.
But JobTalk basically, I professionalized the side hustle, I guess you could say, in April. So
that's really
it's
awesome.
been phenomenal. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you
That's
so
awesome.
much.
It's great to hear stuff like that, because
Yeah.
like stuff like this was something that we really hope that we get some traction. I mean, we've already gotten some traction, but hope that it goes to where we hope it does.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
and it was all kind of born out of you know, well, for me, I was kind of thinking about doing it, and then I had lost my job, unfortunately, due to disability. Kind of long story short, not going to get too into it, but
Is that another podcast?
yeah,
Okay.
it's another time, and it has been discussed on some of the other podcasts. But the big thing was just this is something I definitely feel like it needs to be more. There needs to be more of, and there is more of. I mean, podcasts are just blowing up.
Yep.
But what better time than now to grow your brand, so to speak?
Yeah.
Because of the infinite capabilities of things like YouTube and podcast streaming and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Instagram Live is like a big
That's
thing.
it.
I do a lot of Q&A sessions.
We
for
haven't
free.
started to do Facebook Live or YouTube yet, but eventually we want to get to that point too,
and
to have
calls,
those
too.
different.
Like, do some calling and stuff.
Oh,
Yep.
right.
Sorry about
the VoIP. Got to get the voice IP set up and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah. Don't worry about it. I was like,
well,
oh god,
we-
in
no,
person. Okay, I'll be right there.
I
We-
thought about that. I'm like,
We never
literally-
discussed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
And I
thinking,
didn't even think to ask.
I was wondering like if you were thinking of that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe
And then you
not.
sent me. You're like, by the way, this is the address. And I'm like, oh,
Well, we've been talking.
I
they're not
wasn't
calling
sure.
me. I need to be there.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I sent the address, if I flicked it out.
Like,
I'm
well, glad it's casual. So.
Oh yeah.
oh, for sure.
No, not a problem.
Show up and we're having drinks at 3.
Park in the front. We're right out
Yeah.
back.
Back in the front.
So-
Just look for the lawnmower.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Looks like
I
the
think
Clampetts
that
out there.
that the whole kind of laid back environment, we were really hoping to kind of make things more of a comfortable, less Q&A.
I appreciate that.
because
When jobs
more
are your
fluid.
job, everything. No, I think you're doing it the right way, and I so appreciate it, because whenever people talk about jobs, and whenever people think about interviewing and professionalism and appropriateness and all of these like social norms that we have that are like rooted in almost corporate supremacy, where it's like, this is how you act and you should be this and professional and it's like,
for
as a
Samsung
female,
for 4 years. Totally get
yeah,
it.
there you go. Yeah. I just think, one of the things that I was the most excited to do is when I left the corporate world and started working for myself, it was like, I'm going to go through my closet and donate all my suits because I'm never wearing one again.
Yeah.
Because why do I have to? And if you're somebody that literally needs me to dress or look a certain way, the content isn't that important to you.
That's a wrap.
Because if my
Absolutely.
experience is not enough for you to like believe that I'm a credible source of information on this, then we don't need to work together.
For sure.
I think that whole facet is changing, though, the way that people look at professionalism. Look at CEOs even, Facebook CEOs and stuff have changed the way people look at professionalism because of things like that, because
You would like a drink.
Yeah, that's what that was. That was a that was like a
Lots of signaling going on over
lots
here.
of signaling. We had
Bartender code.
I tried to multitask, but I'm terrible at that. Ask anybody, I'm terrible at multitasking. But where were we? I get distracted by
Professionalism.
Professionalism.
Yeah.
Where were we? Professionalism. Irony. That's good. So when I worked for Samsung, I found that it was really interesting how many like little cues and stuff that are there that it's just passed on, and it's like family shit too. It's dead people's baggage just passed on down the road from other people who did it before their way, and now you got to do it that way because this is what professionalism
This is how we've always done it.
right. And it's
Kiss of
even
death.
more specific when it comes to the social pressures of drinking. If you work in an corporate environment, it's almost like this expectation that you drink and socialize after like these business meetings. At least I found it was very strong in like the Korean culture,
culturally, yeah.
culturally
Yeah.
there. That's like it's very much like okay, everybody's drinks after, and that you're weird, or maybe you don't trust them if you.
Interesting.
It was very weird. It was interesting. I mean, I drank.
Global companies in
Yeah.
general have like really interesting nuances.
That is something that I was just gonna say. Nuances. That's the word I've been looking for.
Journalism
4
major
years
over here.
ago.
I'll help you out.
Thank
Don't
you
worry.
so much. I would absolutely agree that that was a nuance that I was not quite prepared for. Getting drunk in front of all my coworkers, and I mean blasted, and singing "Deaded Bloated" by Stone Temple Pilots. Karaoke.
Lots of karaoke.
And then I woke up the next day in my my room, and they're like, and there's a pair of headphones. I'm like, guys, what were the headphones? Were they passing these out last night? Like, no, dude, you won that. I'm like, what did I do? How did I win that?
Yeah.
They're like, dude, you killed it. I'm
Yeah.
like, killed it.
I think
with
with
a lot.
corporate setting, I learned the art of the mocktail really early.
So that was something that I didn't even know of until I worked for Samsung.
Yeah.
It was I had a friend who's very kind of Christian, worked in the southern Boston area or whatever. Sorry to throw Samsung under the bus. Nothing against these guys. Geez, I hope this is getting hot water. They're a great company. Totally, humanity first. My whole thing is just like, well, how your ways around it? Well, he's like, well, I'm not just gonna go to my room because then that looks bad, but I'm not gonna walk around without a drink in my hand. So mocktail.
Yeah.
A what tail? A mocktail.
Oh yeah.
Like,
when I was bartending, I learned that the
is
best tricks
epic.
from some of my regulars who would come in. And I worked downtown Portsmouth. I bartended down at Rudy's, which is still such an amazing place, and Annika Jan's in Kittery. And it's so funny because I would have people come in for like liquid lunches, especially on Fridays. You kind of get like the finance guys that would come down and they want like Manhattans and stuff. And it's, one. And there was always, maybe one person who was like, he'd come up to me, he'd slip me like a 20 and he would say, these guys need to not know that I'm not drinking. Like they need to think that I'm drinking. So whatever they order for me, it's a soda and lime.
For me. Oh my goodness.
And so he's like, I always tell them that all I'll drink is tequila and soda. Yeah, and that's the same thing for me though. So when I go out, like if I want to, and the thing is like, no, we shouldn't have to do this, but at the same time, isn't it funny how uncomfortable you not drinking makes other people? Which could be an entire like social psychology.
Construct.
Yeah,
Absolutely is.
But when you just don't want to deal with it, and you're like, you know what, I want to go out and have a good time, and I literally can be the most fun sober person ever. But like, don't give me the right
I
out
completely agree.
Yeah.
because I'm not drinking. Like that's not. At the end of the day, I'm going to drive you home. So just say thank you now.
Yeah, pretty
You know
much.
what I mean?
I'm going to make sure you don't die.
Yeah.
Exactly. But as a bartender, I would always hook up that person though, make sure they were all set. I'd keep it refilled like soda water, but
And seriously, enter stage, the worst poison known to man, because it kills people and has for thousands of years. And it's the thing that's not only socially acceptable, but almost expected, and you look down upon if you do, refrain. And that's just so absurd. And then here you have cannabis, completely helpful. That's now just being looked upon in a completely
CBD like exploding everywhere now.
yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
huge. And the thing is that people, I think, are gonna. I mean, again, I think this is the same shift, the same. We'll say. I'm not going to say spiritual shift. I'm going to say
It's a good culture
mental
shift.
culture shift.
Yeah.
I think as a species, I was going to say a special shift, because it's more happening across every facet when you think about technology, social media, the way we view professionalism, people just finding out now about UFOs being a thing and that they're not actually like that they're real and it's on the news and stuff. And it's just like, what? All kinds of these crazy things that are just happening, and it's all happening quickly and close together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's blowing my mind because I think that what's going to happen is I think that we're going to have this lull and things are going to get rough for a little while. And I can only hope that that becomes a positive thing. My concern is just big time what I've kind of held off to the side, because I try to keep this so it can tangent and we just do whatever. But at the same time, I did want to bring it back to, what do you think about the economy and how it's impacted? This is what I was going to ask you earlier, how it impacted what you've seen due to the job market. Because, of course, you've got, the very hard politically right that are just like, well, yeah, see, he did make it great, awesome again. Look at it's awesome. And then you've got people go, well, no, this is an influx and it's a layover. And we do see some increase in, GDP's up. But what is GDP? That doesn't factor in the caretakers at home, the moms taking care of the autistic children, the people that are, so, and that's why, again, I really, really like Yang in this aspect, because he is factoring this in a capitalist aspect. But how do you feel about that? Do you think that, that this was, the one person that did an amazing job coming in and changing everything around? Do you think that this is just kind of a fallout of some, post-era stuff that happened previously? Changes in the way they looked at the job market and past administration? Or...
Totally. Yeah, no, I did not vote for Donald Trump, and I am not a Trump fan.
You like how I sidestepped asking you directly? Welcome
but I'm
to
also
Abstract
not at all like, that I'm the
sure.
most socially liberal person you're going to meet. So the majority of people that I care deeply about in my life are not white, not straight, not cis, not from here. So for me, it's been a really tumultuous,
traumatic.
I
think for
years,
a lot of us it has been.
It's and so to answer your question, I memean, I think people think about the economy, especially with jobs, on a macro level, and they have the the statistics, and the BLS puts out this the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out these numbers every month, and unemployment and all. But the thing is with my job, and especially working with clients who are people in the market who are job hunting or are completely employed and they're confidentially searching, I really boil this down to like a micro level and say, you know what, all I can tell you is how I feel based on what I see every day and the conversations I have with people every day and the conversations I have with companies every day. And also from being in a hiring position for so long, it's really, really skewed. And it's hard because, I was just at a speaking engagement this morning for Planet Fitness, talking to their franchise operations managers and team about how to recruit and hire in a really challenging market. And, I throw a slide up there and I said, technically, yes, most states are under 5% unemployment right now. However, we really don't look at underemployment. So there are so many people that are underemployed that are working that part-time job.
People that are just out of the job market entirely, as
Completely.
Yang has said.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
you don't factor
the
that
metrics
into
are
those
so off.
skewed.
Yeah.
They're so skewed.
I will say that if somebody is really, looking for a job right now, I guess I could just tell you it's challenging. And even if I think back to positions I posted with Lynn, right? Consumer goods company, not a lot of consumer goods companies around here. The hiring was very, very, very specific and picky.
Sure.
Because they needed really niche skill sets for what they were looking for.
As it should be, though. I mean, that makes sense.
Totally. And every industry has their sort of layer of complexity, right? But I think the thing with, I can hear a car alarm.
Yeah.
It's funny how much these microphones pick up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, that's okay.
The door.
Should I shut the door? Yeah. We can edit this out, right?
Yeah, we don't need to.
Or whatever.
Welcome to Abstract Transformations, ladies and gentlemen. Car alarms in the background. My 8-year-old might show up and start shouting about a Minecraft fire at any time. Who knows? I'm just kidding.
But yeah, no, I mean, when I would post these jobs, I'm getting hundreds of applicants, and there's only one job. So many people that just applied for that position are leaving that experience feeling depressed or mad or pissed that they weren't the one to get the job.
Times.
And it's that's where I feel I don't really know if there's any clear-cut way to judge the economy on jobs right now, because we can sit here and say there's so many record number of job openings, but yet I turn around and I talk to employers and they're like, it is so hard to find great talent right now.
Right.
And then you turn around and talk to a candidate, and one candidate might say, yeah, I've got 5 different job offers. I don't know which one I'm going to choose. And then another candidate's like, I haven't gotten a call in 6 months. But the thing is, and the reason why I love what I do and how I work with clients is I have clients who say, I'm just not getting any hits. And I say, well, this is like a diagnostic that you'd run on your car, right? Or like a doctor's appointment.
Sure.
If you sit here and tell me that you're applying for jobs and you are not getting calls back, there's a problem with your resume.
Yep.
Or there's a problem with the fact that you're not following up. Because if you're not
printed
following
in
up,
Comic Sans?
yeah. Or there's trust me, there's a million things. That's a whole other session. But then the other thing is, like, let's say they say, yeah, I've been getting calls, and I'll get on the phone, but then, like, I'm never invited in. Okay, then there's a problem with your phone screen. There's a problem with the way that you're presenting yourself or speaking or articulating over the phone about these opportunities. And then some people say, well, yeah, I've been getting all these interviews and I get all the way to the final round and then I'm not the pick. And it's like, at the end of the day, there's only one role. And you can be just as awesome as the other person, but maybe they had a personal referral from someone that worked there. Maybe there was one little thing that they had that you didn't. That has there's no reflection on you.
I've been that guy that's taken the job away from the people that were higher, because I just came in and I was just like, look, I've been in the appliance industry longer than anybody else, and there's nobody else better than this job. And this video is awesome, and I'm the guy for the job. You know it, I know it. And there's times where I've just botched it completely. I'm like, spill water on myself. I'm like, do you like shoes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but the times that I felt very, very confident and whatnot, it was just the fact that I sold myself in the process, and I know that there's other people that were more qualified for that position.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting it anyway. The Samsung, i.e. the Samsung position. I was just like, oh boy, sweating. But I was like, no, I'm gonna get that job because it's the job that I wanted if I was gonna continue pursuing appliances.
Yeah. So there are a million like steps along the way, and if one of those is off, it could mean the difference for someone not getting a call. And so it's almost like this it's like job hunting chiropractic. You adjust someone just a little bit and crack them back into place and kind of make sure that they're going through things. I mean, honestly, people leveraging LinkedIn in the right way. I do a ton of free community workshops. I have space down at Cove in Portsmouth, which is like the cooperative venture workspace. It's like 36 Maplewood. And so I think typically like twice a month, I'll do free LinkedIn 101 workshops, which is something that my clients pay $175 for a 90-minute session. But again, like I think it's so important to bring this stuff back to the community because, again, most of my clients are remote. My business technically can be national in scope, but I live here, and people in this neighborhood and in these communities need this information, and they can't always afford it.
Rural New Hampshire struggles so much with the lack of local transportation. And here's the thing. We were just talking about the decimation of jobs caused by the influx of automation. But in 2 to 3 years, we're going to have self-driving taxis everywhere through Uber and Lyft. They are going to be everywhere, and they're going to be everywhere in New Hampshire. And that's going to be great for somebody like me who can't drive because of my disability. I literally can't drive anymore, and I have had a bitch of a time being able to deal with Uber and Lyft because of the pricing. The cost's going to go down. It's going to be beneficial. Now, that's going to displace a lot of workers, but this is a new industry that just popped up in the last 10 years anyway. So,
and you think of like the flip side of that too, though. I mean, I think, there's also, as much as automation will certainly play a part in the future space of jobs, right? Employment sector. Think about social media. This is something that wasn't even a thing 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And this is like a massive, like social media analysts. You can come out of college and make 60, 70K out the gate,
right.
And a lot of this stuff could be self-taught even.
No, that I know somebody that literally went from selling, electronics, and he is now, he did this accidentally. He accidentally makes $200,000 a year.
That's an awesome mistake.
That is an awesome mistake, and it's one that every one of us here in the room can do just as easily as he did, and it's mind blowing. He literally just went through his house and he just looked at everything and just basically sold almost everything in his house, and just put it all up on eBay, and basically all of it sold for more than he bought it for, and then he continued to play that off as like, I just got rid of a ton of junk and made a bunch of money. But all of this stuff is little niche-y, stuff. He goes to Savers and buys a mug for,
25
$5.
cents or
And I heard
something,
this.
yeah,
My
then-
old coworkers told me about this too. Somebody that they know that bought I think they even said it was a mug. Same circumstance, but this was like they bought it like $2, and they made $175 on it.
Wow.
And the guy that I'm talking about, he's like, yeah, I literally just made $200,000 last year between the little bit of carpentry work that he did under the table and didn't at all claim, and then the rest of it that he had to claim.
Yeah, I mean,
and he just organized an eBay thing. He's now just buying. He's going to different yard sales and
no, this is like such. So
couldn't
the
have
gig
done that
economy,
10 years ago.
Yeah. This is so when we talk about the gig economy, and I was just talking about this morning, like millennials, right? It's so funny because millennials have such a stigma around them, or us, I should say, because we are millennials.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm
Eating
33.
too many avocados.
I'm like right in the middle. But the thing is what's funny is people are always like, oh, millennials, they're not loyal, and there's no loyalty anymore, and they'll just like get up and leave your company. And it's like, guess what? This was the generation that saw mom and dad get laid off. And they were traumatized by losing their house to foreclosure during the real estate bubble. Like they've experienced certain things that innately make them distrust corporations and banking and real estate. So the thing is it's not
and
necessarily and government, absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is that millennials are more motivated by growth and recognition than by compensation. And people are like, that's so weird. All these little hippies running around, they don't care about money. And it's like, no. I'm not saying they don't value money. They just don't need to rely on one employer to fulfill 100% of their income. They can go out and find a side hustle. They're going to go sell stuff on Poshmark or eBay. They're going to go out and do some like website design because they watched a YouTube video and learned how to code. They can do all this stuff on the side.
Satisfaction for them is being with their friends, spending time and having fun and being artistic and living in an artisan community, experiencing an existential life kind of community. It's not buying a house that they can't afford with 5 or 6 different cars and plunging the entire economy into a 2008 financial crisis.
I'm a tiny house on wheels.
Oh, dude,
I'm a tiny house on wheels kind of person.
Cool.
Oh, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I had plans
So,
to do
I mean,
that.
I would
Really?
if I didn't
Get
have,
a trailer and try to get that going. Totally.
didn't have a 8-year-old. That would be. I just feel like it's so tough with a tiny house for a little kid. To limit him to the. And also my 8-year-old, no, that ain't gonna happen. That's gonna last 5 seconds.
You're like,
Everything in that tiny house would be tiny broken.
350 square feet with 2 people is tough.
Yeah.
It's just me and my cat, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot easier.
I always thought, like, in my head, like, the idea, before considering even having a kid in life, I would do something like that, go live in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, life's not too short yet, but.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of that. Use as much space as you need. That tiny little area that you don't need to necessarily use more. But even these shipping container houses and stuff too that are still 980, 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
You spend
And
$5,000.
you're mortgage free. Yeah, you're literally living mortgage free. Yeah. And then you have all these towns, and this is something I'm griping about right now with New Hampshire, is like, and I think Sununu just announced that they're going to start doing a study on this, on how to fix the zoning for tiny houses, because this is a huge movement right now where people are like, I don't want a mortgage. I want to drop, 30, 40,000, pay for something, right? Maybe have that be the sum of it. Yeah. And then be done and own it. And then you have all of these communities around the country that are like, hey, there are actually apps now where you can look at land, have your tiny house move somewhere else for 12 months. You basically pay lot rent. Yeah. And then you can move it back. And so, but the land ordinances are so crazy, and the states are like, whoa, our zoning codes don't really, it falls in between certain things, and, sewage and all this. It's like, then fix it. Find me a solution.
Right.
Like, not having the conversation is no longer an option.
Solutions. Yeah. And it sucks because there were people like, I think that this is where, partisanship and the Democrats and Libertarian, and the Republicans butt heads big time, and they never find common ground because they're like, well, we got to do all this. And they're like, no, we just want to do this. But we got to do all this. And it's just, nothing ever happens. And it's unfortunate because they're really, something like that's a perfect example where a lot of people could be, put in a position where they could afford their homes and they get just kind of muscled into the mobile home community. I mean, not that mobile homes are a bad thing.
No, my
bought
mom
one
has
out.
one. I grew up in
and-
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
But I
saved
want to
us a
take my
ton of
house
money.
with
but
me. I want
Yeah,
like
yeah.
turtle status. I want
That's-
to throw my house in my back,
Yes,
and I want a
perfect.
big
Be able to-
like up and
boom.
move. I am a minimalist. Like this is how I want to
Yep.
live my life. I can work on the road.
For sure.
Like my job is remote for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And it's like, help me. I literally tweeted this the other day. I think I tweeted it. I think it was at Sununu. It was a couple days before it. No, maybe you saw it. It was a couple days. Not saying I have this much influence because I definitely don't. But I was like, hey, I was born in New Hampshire, educated in New Hampshire. I am a small business owner in New Hampshire. Help me stay. Like, help me stay here because
Right.
I am
Yeah.
not going to drop all this money on buying a house again.
Yeah.
Like, never doing it again. Like, I'm
Oh,
going to
my
get a
God.
tiny home. Help me help you. I will, like, I am happy to, this whole stay, work, play
Yeah.
momentum,
God,
right?
that's
They're
such.
like, stay in the state. And I'll tell you, when I was in career services at UNH, I would have social work majors
Yeah.
who literally have to spend $150,000 a year on an education. And the state of New Hampshire, I mean, UNH is, I don't know, Steve would tell you about this, Steve Marchand.
Yeah,
Him
yeah,
and I
yeah.
partnered a lot at UNH when he was there. UNH is still 50th in the nation when it comes to the amount of state funding that they get. So you have like,
Wow.
University of Mississippi or something, and it's like, it's, $800 a year to go to school there or something crazy. It's super cheap. People can just afford to go to state school.
Wow.
UNH, it's like $25,000 a year for an in-state student, and that's like not even including room and board or something crazy like that. Don't
That's
quote me, but it's something like
insane.
that. So when you have a system like that set up, you have these students, a social worker who has to be licensed to do the job that she's trying to do. You have state regulations enforcing it. You have
All
the
of
state
that
not
could
putting
be
in money into
weeded
the
out.
education.
That can all be eliminated.
And she's like, you know what? I'm going to go to Mass, and I'm going to make 3 times what I would make in Mass that I would in New Hampshire. So I'm going to go. So this whole idea of like stay, work, play, it's like, no. Help me stay. Like,
Yeah.
you need to do your part because the way the rules are set up right now does not benefit. There's no incentive for me to stay.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I think that, of course, I think that things like the idea of UBI or something like that, driving $12,000 per year per person into a local economy, because we're all going to spend that $12,000 a month in car repairs and getting our, just getting a haircut. I haven't in forever. Like, I just, things like that, just everything. Like, we aren't blowing money because we can't afford to. And the fact is, if we were, then those companies would be thriving off of that. And it's not necessarily blowing money, right? We can be responsible, but right now people just can't even live. So we need that kind of environment. I feel like that allows entrepreneurs and people to thrive. But I think where I was getting with that is is bringing back to the entire job market as a whole, impacting that. I think people are going to work more, not less. I think that's just going to stimulate them to want to be able to. Right now, they're just having a hard time living in New Hampshire because the cost of living is so goddamn expensive up here.
Yeah. You have to, it's definitely, when I was, God love my mom because she's
It's $7.25 minimum
she's
wage.
out here. Oh yeah. I mean, we gotta cut it out with that.
Come
There's a
on.
problem with that.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm actually a libertarian, but I'm left leaning in a lot of ways. But geez, come on.
You can't afford anything. I lived
You
paycheck to
can't.
paycheck, and by that I mean even like just putting groceries on a credit card up until I took that job at Lint. So, and then within 3.5 years there, I paid off all of my debt, all of my student loans, had savings for the first time in like forever. It was honestly, I made more money bartending than in my first 3 professional careers.
Yeah.
I took pay cuts to get into the employment sector. Like when I was leaving staffing, going into career services, I took a pay cut. And so I'm a perfect example of that millennial that does not value compensation more than growth and recognition.
Right.
However, I knew how to make money other ways. I was still picking up other bartending shifts. I was still freelancing.
That's why I left Samsung to go pursue something with Solar City, and that was the worst idea I ever did. That was just a real bad
Solar
idea. Yeah. Not that I don't believe in photovoltaic panels and
That's great.
clean energy is great, but selling solar leases to people, no, that was not my thing. And I just realized it was like, great, okay. So I thought it was this environmental calling. I'm like, yeah, no.
You know what?
And I
Figuring out
can't,
what you
and I
don't-
can't pay my bills. Great.
Figuring out what you don't want to do is half the battle. And I say that to people all the time. And you do not know what you don't like until you're doing something you don't like.
Touche.
And so it is all
And even
learning.
if you're good at something too, though, I'm great at selling appliances. Damn good. And that's something I could say. They never let me go because of that. It was because really I was dragging their company down because of attendance issues caused by my issues with my ankles. And, you know, long story short, they should have done things a little differently. But I definitely brought a lot to the table as an employee. But fuck selling appliances. Fuck them. And the business. Fuck them.
You know, it's funny.
Because I just don't want to do that. I would much rather be here having this conversation with you. To be completely honest with you, I get more out of it as a person, and I feel like it's better contribution to society. Because honestly, robots are going to be selling those appliances, and they already are. So I mean, it's already happening, and it's just a matter of time until those are gone too.
I think it honestly, I mean, everybody's work-life relationship is so different. And it's funny because I have some clients who are, it's like some people work to live and other people live to work. Yeah. And there's no right or wrong. And there's such a spectrum there. But it's funny because I'll have some clients that are like, yeah, you know, I've been miserable. I just want to do something I'm passionate about again. Like, I need to find a job that I'm passionate about. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I have other clients that are like, yeah, I don't care. My passions happen outside of work. I just need a job that pays really well. I need to make more money because I want to fund these passions. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so it's again, like, you have to understand what you value, and at different points in life you value really different things. And I don't think anybody should be held accountable, quote unquote, for that, or shamed for that. I mean, I was a journalism major. Am I a failure because I'm not writing for a newspaper? I did a 6-month internship and writing for a daily newspaper and was like, hell no, I don't want to do this. Like, it is not, I love writing, but so this whole idea of like, how do we define success, right? And it's really, really tough. And I think especially for women, like in this space, I love that pay equity is more of a conversation now. Right. Even in recruiting, it was like, whenever I would have people on the phone, and Massachusetts just recently made it illegal to ask people what they're currently making. So when you're applying for a job, a recruiter can't say, what are you currently making? Yeah. And then base their, salary bracket that they give you off of that number. Same thing in Maine. I'm waiting for New Hampshire to do it. But the thing is like, I always told candidates, like, what do you need to make in order to consider making this transition? And when I coach people through salary negotiation, this is what I tell them. Like, you do not at all have to provide someone a pay stub, have to give somebody what you are currently making. And I used to tell my candidates that I'd be talking to, I say, listen, I'm never going to ask you that, because as a woman, if you have always traditionally been underpaid, I am not going to sit here and perpetuate your devaluation at all. That's by asking you what you currently make and thinking, okay, I'm going to give you a 10% bump and I'm somehow doing you justice. No. What do you need to make? What I have a pay range. I can just tell you what this range is. You can tell me if this works for you, and we can continue the conversation. It's not as much of like a game as I think people think it is, and you're actually seeing a lot more transparency with it now too. People posting
transparent wages. So,
yep, exactly.
And I think that's exactly all it does is oppress people of ethnicity or with disabilities or because of gender or sexual preference, anything like that. Like, it's just completely unacceptable that somebody would do that in the first place. But by them saying, no, you can't tell your friend Justin that you work with how much they're making because he might be making more than you, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to be, well, that's the whole point. You don't want us to know that, because then we'd be like, hey, no, fuck you. And you should be paying both of us more.
But here's the thing. Who cares, right? Like, at the end of the day, the companies have to own that process. And it's not like you can just flip a switch and say, okay, we're going to be transparent today. Because guess what? You have a bunch of people that are working for you that have probably been working for you for 10 years. Yep. And if you go post a financial analyst position, for example, and you say this position in the job description, you say this position pays $50,000 a year. I'm just making this up. If you have someone in your camp that's not making $50,000 and they see that and they're like, hey, why am I not making this? You have an opportunity to either adjust, like make a market adjustment, or you have to have an explanation of like, well, this position's requiring an MBA and you don't have an MBA. So if you want to go back to school and get an MBA, we can absolutely have that discussion, but that's why this position is banded the way it is. Companies have to be prepared to have that conversation. But and
own it. Like you said. Own it. Don't be shy about it if you're going to have that conversation. Yeah. And that's something like I understand in New Hampshire.
If you don't feel like you're making enough money, go find another job.
Right. And that's why, like, I do understand certain aspects of the will to hire and stuff in New Hampshire, but in this certain perspective, for me too, I got burned by it because they could just kind of do whatever they wanted because they, I took the time and effort to put in, safeguards with FMLA and all this stuff that they kind of just traipsed on and didn't care about. Like all these things that it's like, yeah, well, no, you can't do that stuff.
And I think whenever you're talking about, I mean, especially marginalized populations, but people don't even tend to know their rights when it comes to interviewing. And I talked to a lot of folks in the groups at the jail when I was working at the jail just one morning a week. And I basically put together this curriculum for pre-release employment counseling. And it was just all about understanding your rights, the fact that people can't come out and say, have you ever been arrested? What were your crimes? Like, people can't say that. There's a checkbox on an application, but that's a document, and that's a really different piece of the process. When you're actually talking to someone, you can't come out and ask that. And so someone could be wearing a crucifix around their neck and you can't ask them if they're Catholic. Like, you can't touch religion. You can't ask someone if they've got kids. That's another one that people get real squirrely with.
Really?
People asking, like, women, how many kids they have, how old are they? Oh, well, you're sure you're gonna be able to come in on time, blah, blah, blah. You could literally, like, companies can get sued for that. Oh, yeah. Right? But people don't know. And I remember when I worked at Hesser and we had a medical assisting program, and I had a student who was interviewing with a local hospital, but she was interviewing at the doctor's office, which is the practice that was owned by the hospital. And it was an office manager, not an HR person, that was interviewing her. And the person said, how many kids do you have? And she got so nervous, and she came back to me. She goes, I thought you said that that's illegal and they can't ask that. I go, it is, and they're not supposed to. So here's what your options are. If you don't get this job and you feel like you were legitimately discriminated against, you can go to the state and file a claim.
Right.
And it's crazy to me. There's too many people having these conversations.
But it's tough because, you have rights, but like, so if I roll into, we'll say, Best Guy's appliance, which isn't a realistic appliance, and I roll in there, I go, well, I want a job, here are all my qualifications, and they go, well, we think somebody else is better than you. And I mean, I genuinely don't think there is, because you already heard my spiel earlier. I'm cocky. No,
I was gonna say, so perspective.
Exactly.
Eye of the beholder. We are all.
Yes, obviously, somebody. The place that I'm thinking of specifically, I did have somebody else that got the job over me, and they definitely were not more qualified, but they felt it was a better fit for the position for what they needed.
Fit.
Fit. So, but at the time, that had nothing to do with that. I was walking unaided from the cane, before I worked for the most recent place. But if I were to go into one of those places now, I can almost guarantee you, I'll get the interview and I'll go through the process, but they're not going to give me that job. And for the main reason being that it's just not feasible. If I tell them that I need, every now and then I have to take time off because of major ankle issues and
So there's something called reasonable accommodation.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to make sure that they understand, right? So as someone who has a disability, you have rights to a reasonable accommodation. There are a lot, and I am not a HR lawyer or anything like that, but it's something where, for anybody listening, like, that's something that you should definitely look up, because there's a difference between asking someone for a reasonable accommodation and asking for an accommodation that isn't actually feasible based on the job, right? Like, if the job requirements say must be able to lift 50 pounds and someone comes in and says, well, I can't do that, that's a job spec, right? That's a job qualification.
Well, and I think that's more probably at now going into those jobs, because moving around appliances was part of the job description. Now I'm just not going to be able to do that anymore. I pushed myself as long as I could.
But let's say you went for an office job. Let's say you went for a job where you could be sitting down all day. You know what I mean?
Right. But then my concern is the pain flare-ups causing me to take days off and whatnot. Is that something that, places will accommodate for? And I feel like they may say that they would, but it's like, are they really going to? And in my, line of work, appliances, a job like that doesn't necessarily exist. It would have been the job that I was at. They could have sat me down and put me in in an office job. I sold half of what I sold, $1.2 million. Half of what I sold was over the phone. So it's like,
right. Well, that's it. But that's the other thing too, is again, understand what you value. You value flexibility, right? Like, you really want to have the time off, but at the same time, being able to have that conversation with a company and kind of saying, like, asking for time off might not necessarily be what they view as an accommodation. That typically accommodations require like a medical documentation, right? So if your doctor says, you know, based on, I have no idea, right? So based on the situation, you probably estimate that there'd be like 1 day a month where he probably would need to, you know, come in for an appointment or something like that. There's documentation around that. You're fine.
Yep.
But it's kind of like a sick day, right? Like if you just don't feel well for any reason, that's what those days are for.
Right.
So if you find a place that has unlimited sick time, which is a really, really common benefit now, that is something that could actually work to your benefit.
Sure.
But again, that's a value.
It's right.
And that's something that's important. And it's a necessity.
And it's whether, you know, you can find a place that would accommodate. My thing is more so just because of pain flare-ups, being able to find a position that would, you know, be able to accommodate that in addition to the disability, and just being like, oh, no, I can't do it today. I can't make it in. And that happens.
There's also resources though too. Like sometimes it's like vocational rehab, right? Like there's organizations out there that are specifically working with organizations who have said we are willing to be more flexible. You know, organizations that say, you know, if there are veterans, right, they're working with the VA, and they'll say if veterans come back and they have PTSD, and sometimes there's major, you know, issues where they need to step away for a couple days and go seek mental health and all this kind of stuff. There are companies that have actually raised their hand and said, we're happy to hire these folks. And so I think if you work with certain resources, I want to say Work Opportunities Unlimited is one in Dover. There's Voc Rehab. There's a couple, and they're specifically geared towards working with folks with physical disabilities. It could be a mental situation, could be something where someone's on the spectrum, and for whatever the situation is, they have their whole purpose is to connect people with companies that are actually accommodating, so that you don't have to wear that burden, right, of finding that company.
Yeah. Right. That's amazing.
There you go. Any other questions?
Yeah, no. So I mean, I would say, you know, in your experience with how, I don't know, I guess we view the way we view the GDP. Do you think that, you know, that represents fairly all of, you know, the different types of, you know, caregivers and stuff that don't get factored in to kind of that discussion? I think more so of the when we're talking about, you know, wage gap differences and all that stuff, whether that's being fairly represented.
I think there's two things going on. So there's the analysis of these things, and these are the stats that you see come out, right, on certain like the BLS.gov and these sites. But then you have the reaction to these things in the actual hiring process. So you take women stepping out of the workforce to have kids, right? Need to be out of work for at least 12 weeks, hopefully, right? So, but FMLA, I mean, I think it's what, 6 weeks? Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
So you have women who are making this professional sacrifice to step away from their career that they may have grown for 20 years to have kids. And so you have stats around that. But what you don't typically have, or the reality of it, is when they come back and they try to come back to work, sometimes there's not as much flexibility. Let's say that they leave their job. They don't want to return to the company that they were at. Now they have a gap on their resume. I just posted something about this on my social. Really good, cheeky memes about employment on my Instagram. If you ever want to go, it's JobTalk LLC. But the idea of these employers, of these hiring managers that, you know, they see a resume and they're like, oh, this person looks great, but they're unemployed right now, so there must be a reason for that. Who else do you got? And I remember working with hiring managers like this, like over the course of my career, and just kind of being like, what are you talking about? Like, they did this job. Like, we should totally be talking to this person. They're like, yeah, but they, you know, it's been months since their last job. And it's like, I'm sorry. I hope that you never have someone die in your family. I hope you never have to care for an ailing parent. I hope you never have to step out of your, like, you must have been a terrible employee because you had a gap in employment. Like, we need to get out of our ivory tower with this. Like, we have to stop with the ego and just look at someone's experience and be like, you know what? 6 to 12 months, like, come on, man. Like, I know technology changes things quickly, but you can't tell me that you can't train against that gap. You know, if you hire this person and that's going to be detrimental.
Yeah,
like,
I would say the opposite. I think it's very likely that you could.
It's a bias. It's a very clear bias. Like,
things happen, you know.
Yeah.
Right, to a lot of people. And I think that's the compassion just in general has, it's shifted in this pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like, and I think that's where the real problem is with the the addiction aspect too, mental health in general. It's just gotten to the point where it's just a big mess, so some cool questions. You ever had any experience with any like government programs, deep state kind of black market UFO stuff?
Have I ever had any experiences? Is this a real question?
Yes. So have you ever recruited anybody
to work in that space? No.
Have you ever done any federal recruiting
Area
for
51
Area
has never
51?
been a client of mine. Yeah. Although I'm a believer. If we're here, there's no way that something else can't be here.
Yeah,
I'm also incredibly spiritual too, so I feel
Okay.
like there's I believe in energy and frequency.
Same.
And yeah.
Cool.
So
What do you think about the most recent them just basically saying that we're being visited by UFOs? We have no idea where they come from.
I haven't even seen that, so I don't even know what you're talking about. But
dude.
I'm honestly not surprised.
And see-
I swear to God, I saw a UFO when I was a kid.
Okay, so this is the crazy thing. You probably did.
I was like
and
15.
I've always been like really very hardcore skeptic, but I think this is the thing that they're getting away with very effectively. They have completely come out with the fact that UFOs are visiting us. They know about it. It's been interfering with craft for well over 50 years.
The nukes.
They're turning off nukes on us. They will not let us launch a nuke into space for whatever reason. They don't want us to.
Who's reporting this?
So it's been on CNN, Fox News. But so this isn't like a.
I'm totally gonna go. Oh, yeah, this isn't like the conspiracy theorists underground. Like
No tin hats here. I was really blown away by this. The first thing that caught my interest into this was it like a total tin hat documentary? At first I thought it was, and then it kind of led way into things. I'm like, oh, you actually can just research this. In the late Obama administration, there was a lot of work to declassify a bunch of stuff, and during those declassifications, there's people like, okay, well now it's out, we're gonna say, and then at the same time, I think it was 2011, 2012. I don't remember. You have to watch it. Where you YouTube this CNN UFO or Fox News UFO, and it's going to be probably the first big accounts where it's just, there's not real, it's shaky imaging, and it always is, but it's definitely from the USAF, and it's definitely them saying they don't know what it is and where it came from, and they even had the old Pentagon chief on CNN saying, we don't know what they are,
no kidding,
but we know that they're not of our nature. It could potentially be another country, but
I think it's.
Come on.
I'm honest. I'm not surprised at all.
And that was him saying, "Come on!" Like, so now, I mean, and actually, you know what the craziest thing about this whole thing is? A good majority of this whole thing has been driven and a lot of it's been stirred up by the ex-bassist of Blink-182.
Blink-182.
Really?
Yeah, the lead singer, right?
He left the band to pursue.
What's his name?
Mark something?
Mark Hoppus.
Yeah.
I think no, not Mark Hoppus. Tom DeLonge. Sorry,
the other guy.
the guy who's not with band anymore. He Tom DeLonge, like he founded the To the Stars Academy, and he's with that guy Luis Elzanato or whatever that worked for. Yeah. So I was at first I thought it was absolutely nuts, and then I started into a research tangent and.
I totally will.
Absolutely amazing. Oh yeah, have fun later.
Yeah,
it's some cool stuff. I'll try to see if I can find a link and send it to you, because it's something that I was absolutely like, because I'm a skeptic. I have been a skeptic, pretty hard skeptic about a lot of things, and science is my go-to always. But I am also been, I grew up on the X-Files, and I've always had that like love for the idea. But I've always been like, okay, well, show me the proof. Until I have proof, I'm never gonna.
Right.
And here's some pretty hard proof. And
Yeah,
that's hard. That rocks the foundation of everything I understand as a human being. And but I'm open to that. There's some people are still just doing this right now, which is,
oh God, why live life like that? You know what I mean?
yeah. I wonder
really
what they're
weird
gonna
thing.
do when these are the same people that like voted Trump. And people that just can't they're like, no,
Yeah.
he's not. He didn't. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
It's like he did, and he's a liar and a con man. And
Yeah.
dude, he said he sold steaks. Fuck.
And bad education. Yeah.
Not in non-education.
Yeah, non-education.
And horrifically in a scam. Yeah. Oh my God. They're listening. But I don't even think he's articulate. I mean, I had some things against Obama because they were listening, and they were that deep state where they're spying on everybody and stuff. Not directly, but they're just kind of figuring the way around it. So I have my gripes with it. But I don't. Here's my thing with Trump. I don't think he's put together enough to get his way out of a wet paper bag or himself together in the morning. They gotta spray him and force him into that oversized suit of his, and he just can't even dress himself probably. And in the end, or he does try to dress himself, and that's what happens. Who the hell knows? I mean, our job's not to bash him here. I guess it's just I don't think that he's this super, articulated.
No.
Got his thumb on the pulse of what's going on, and he's trying to screw everybody over. Because I feel like there's a lot of super hard liberals that are like, oh, he's trying to burn everybody over, and he's got this plan to, I don't think he knows what he's doing. I think he got in there, he didn't expect to, and he's like, oh shit. What do I do now? And I gotta make sure I don't look bad, and I can't let these guys down because all those white people voted for me, and they're angry and evangelical.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway,
I'm kind of just holding my breath until his term is over.
Yeah, I'm all. Yeah, I don't think impeaching him is a smart idea. I think that would be a terrible idea.
I just can't wait till the whole I can't wait for 2020. I am so thrilled, and I think honestly we have so many good candidates, and there's so many great people. Honestly, there's never going to be the perfect candidate, and I don't think we should be looking for perfect. I love imperfect people.
Yep.
Because we are all imperfect, and so that's almost a criteria for me. If you're too squeaky clean, I almost question it.
Yep.
But
well, that's why I was going for the outsider candidate. That's what everybody wanted with Trump was the outsider candidate. And honestly, it was that or Tulsi. I really like Tulsi Gabbard. She's a phenomenal.
I liked her a lot, but her
person,
whole conversion therapy support thing with her dad, and there was
oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, so that's my only thing, and that's a fundamental thing. If you fundamentally don't understand equality, not understand, but if you do not support full blown equality for people,
she
can't
says
get on board.
she's always
I was
pro
a big fan of hers.
LGBTQ.
She is now. She says she is now.
Yep.
But for you to people vote with their dollars, and I think if you are going to support organizations that support conversion therapy, no.
That's why I'm so hardcore behind Yang. I like Sanders in the aspect that I trusted him. He just doesn't align with a lot of my politics, and I am kind of libertarian, but my thing in this game around is not divisiveness, it's inclusion. And I've seen just because I'm campaigning for him actively, I've seen such an inclusiveness for Trump supporters where they're feeling not condescended to and not talked down to and trashed on, but no, we understand what happened and why you voted that way, but welcome. Come here.
So you said for Yang?
Give him a hug. It's very inclusive.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah.
You said for Yang or for
For
Sanders?
Yang.
Yeah.
Yang. Yeah, not Sanders.
Yeah.
No, there's a very big divisiveness there, and that's the thing that sucks because I like Sanders. And I think he's not trying to do that, and I think he brought people together in a lot of aspects.
Yang's still way under the radar. I think he's just got to.
Yeah, but
most people don't even know he's a contender.
Yes and no, but so check it out, and that's the way I'm all about numbers and metrics.
I've been trying to figure this out. I hear a lot about him, but I'm like, I don't
he started out as I think this is a chess game for this guy's incredibly smart. He started out campaigning a year and a half ago in Iowa and New Hampshire, where you need to, and then at least in our areas he's gained 10. But you're right, abroad I don't think anybody really knows who he is other than the entire internet now of that whole thing. But as of recently, his poll numbers are going right up, which
great.
is really interesting because it's just so I'm interested to watch that. But yeah, obviously, if he doesn't fall into that, I'm gonna put my weight behind Sanders and hope that he knocks out Biden, because I think Biden is completely out of touch with reality, and he is absolutely going to lose to Trump.
Yeah.
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 If they put an establishment candidate up against that guy, they're going to lose against Trump.
I just want someone competent.
Yeah.
Who doesn't meddle in my health, my what I can do with my body. I am extremely socially liberal, and that is important to me.
Totally
Finances,
agree.
I can understand financially where some Republicans come in. I can understand. So it's this idea of like, I don't have to vote a certain way for me to understand how you feel about it. But socially liberal, like if you do not believe in actual equality for people,
human rights, their own personal autonomy,
I cannot get on board with you.
I
right?
am completely, and that's why I'm like, I keep on going back to that.
Like, person of color for in the seat. I think it'd be. Again, like I know Obama, but also too like a female. Like let's go. Like we've got great
and that's why
right
I really liked. I like
Kamala, Elizabeth Warren.
I can't stand Kamala or Warren. I'm really worried. I like Chelsea a lot, but I don't think that either one of them are.
Chelsea's not a
until I found out
she's flip flopping on a big issue for me.
I didn't know anything about that at all.
Look that up later.
Had you not said anything about that, I would have not known at all.
Yeah.
Because
she's got really good PR because it hit the press and it was all over the news for like a good solid like 2 weeks.
And I've been kind of following her, but then again, I've been actively campaigning for Yang because of the human-centered capitalism thing. He wants to go in and change the GDP because it doesn't require congressional approval from GDP to a human-centered scorecard. So that includes, because he has an autistic son and his wife stays home or whatever. That does include her pay and all. And also, I mean, the other thing is $1,000 a month. Think of how many abused wives or spouses or partners or anybody in any
could afford to leave their
right.
partner and go find housing
and get out.
It's a huge issue.
That's
in Hampshire.
a huge thing.
Yep.
It's a
People.
good net. There's
Yeah.
a lot of that going on. It's awful.
And that's, I think that's where I keep on, for me, keeps on going back, is I keep on thinking about that, is the amount of people that it could help.
Stay in bad situations.
Stay in bad situations that can't afford to leave. And how much, that's really the only thing keeps ringing it true for me. It's like $1,000 for me would be great. It really would change my life. And then, but I just it's like, it really makes me almost kind of upset when I think about how many people are stuck in a situation that they absolutely can't get out of only because they don't have just $1,000,
especially in this area,
and that could make a whole world of difference in a rural territory where there is no transportation and alcoholism runs supreme. And I feel like, and that's why I don't know, I just keep on, I feel bad because I don't want it to be really unbiased having him on here, but now I'm going to be all, you're going to have to be the unbiased guy here because I'm going to try to come at him with some libertarian stuff because I want to represent that, because I think if he can go after the libertarians, then he can win it. He's going to lose the gun control thing with them, which I think he doesn't really care about. And I actually am kind of with him in some aspects, which I wouldn't be considered a real libertarian, I guess, if I am. But I
don't think you have to agree on every single issue, though. I think there are core things that people need to. You have to have alignment on certain things.
Women's reproductive rights are the big thing, and that's something he's just like, in my opinion, no man should have any right to legislate women's reproductive rights, period. That's just his stance. So he thinks it just should be left up to women in general, conservative and progressive women. Because they're the ones making the choices for the. It's like, no, old white men. No.
We know more.
Fucking Colonel Sanders making fucking. But what the fuck? Oh Jesus! Colonel Sanders does not need to be making reproductive right decisions for women in any reality ever.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's funny being in New Hampshire too with all of it going on. I mean, even at Pride in Portsmouth last weekend, it was like every candidate had swarms of teams out with, hey, did you sign up to vote? Are you voting in the primary? Or
of course.
Can I get your information? Can you want to come to an event? And I was like, nope. I'm just not.
We got to get down to these political rallies more often. I wanted to go down to bring Gavin to support and stuff.
To Pride? Oh, it was fantastic. It was gorgeous out.
Yeah, my daughter and her friends went there, and my daughter's going to be 17. So
Oh my God, you have a 17-year-old?
it's wild.
Time flies.
Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome. I think it's great. It was an awesome turnout. Yeah, I think it's just it's cool
isn't
to
it
see
kind of smarmy when candidates like go in and they use something like that to kind of like
they're tokenizing an event. Mm-hmm.
doesn't it make you just want?
I feel I posted something on my Instagram the other day that said
That's why I
something
don't
about
feel
this
bad
where
about
it's
going after 'em.
yeah, no, I mean I think I think for me it's same thing with companies, right? You hear this month is Pride, right? So companies that are like, we're all about LGBTQ, blah, blah. And I'm just like, so where are you the other 11 months of the year? Because if you're not like, if this is not as big of a priority to you all the time, why should I give you brownie points for changing your logo to a rainbow and talking about this? Do I think the support is great? Absolutely.
Did good. You
Yeah.
were clapping.
Right. Like, but where are you all the
Give him
time?
a
It's
Nancy
like,
Pelosi clap, ladies and
yeah,
gentlemen.
it's like companies that change their header photos to African Americans during Black History Month and talking about how they value inclusion. And it's like, really? Like, are you not literally just tokenizing someone in this? Like, stop playing it for political gains
Oh no,
or
they
marketing
fucking
gains.
are.
Like,
They absolutely fucking are. They definitely are. They're gonna use because I don't believe this is capitalism. I believe it's corporatism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm big on board with free market capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, and all that. But I think it needs to be updated for today.
Mm-hmm.
I think that humanity being a primary focus, you got to have a basic how we take care of our most fragile reflects us as a society. Would you not agree? I mean, that really makes a big deal.
oh yeah.
But I think that what's happening with capitalism now, that's corporatism, not capitalism.
I think there's just a ton of ignorance out there too. You know, it's like you got people like, I mean, and this is, I feel blessed to have worked at UNH because it was the most liberal work environment ever. And I met people who have had such different life experiences than me. I didn't even hear the term white privilege until I worked in that environment at 26 years old. And I heard that for the first time.
Yeah.
It is just great. And I have amazing friends from all different areas of the world who have had these crazy, you know, experiences in this area that I've grown up with that I've never had. And so you understand your privilege on so many different aspects. Able-bodyism is such an amazing example of privilege that people don't think about too. Like the fact that isn't being able-bodied a temporary privilege for all of us? Because at some point the body's going to break down and you're going to you're going to lose that privilege eventually. So the fact that people don't take into account rights for or certain the way that we are with people who come from different experiences, different backgrounds, have different levels of privilege. It's just nuts to me that, like, you know,
it really is. No, you're right.
The loss of perspective or the lack of perspective at times are people who are like, oh, you know, all these snowflakes, these millennial snowflakes and their pronouns and this and that. And it's like, you obviously don't have someone who's close to you who's had this experience or who's grown up trans or who's ever had to deal with anything like this. Right. And I'm sorry that you've never had that experience. But if you had, or if someone that you've cared deeply about has had that experience, we would be having a really different conversation right now.
See,
ignorance
I think that
is bliss,
comes
but
down
also
to
ignorance is ignorance. Like,
no, absolutely. I think it comes down to the individual person and them being ignorant or not. Because, and this is where, like, we may not completely agree. I believe that if somebody came up to me and they wanted me to address them a certain way, I'm always going to do that. I would never want to offend anybody or hurt anybody. But I would never necessarily... I don't think anybody is expecting anybody to know right out of the gate. So if I addressed somebody wrong, they would say, hey, you know, I would appreciate if you addressed me this way. I think that this whole notion from the far right that, you know, oh, well, you know, they're expecting us to, you know, to address them a certain way, or, well, it's my freedom of speech. I should be able to say whatever I want, and I shouldn't have to be expected to be. I go,
but it's like, don't be a
they're not
dick.
expecting you. But
seriously.
there's a difference between breaking. There's a difference between breaking that fine line of freedom of speech, because I do agree I should be able to say whatever I want, say what I think, and also look like a dick face in the process.
If you want to be a dick, then
be a dick.
they know now. You don't
right.
have
You
to,
don't have to keep on being a dick.
But the second that your freedoms, and this is I'm pulling this from a James Baldwin quote, the second that your freedoms start infringing on my ability to live in an equitable space, like that's the second that I don't care about your freedom of speech anymore. Like if you literally are like, if it's just, it's crazy to me that people get so up in arms about this, and it's just because they're bigots. It's just because people are scared of what they don't know, you know. And we see this in every aspect of Trump America.
No, and I agree. I think that the Jordan Peterson perspective, which I don't necessarily agree with, is just that we have to have the ability to have conversation, and if we don't have the ability to have conversation without just
seeking to understand,
because I mean, for me, that's always more my objective, and less like, well, I just want to have the ability to do whatever I want because I'm a white guy. It's more so is like, well, I believe that freedom of speech is necessary for us to be able to have conversation without the concern of saying something uncomfortable. Because if I say something uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable, but we have to be able to say uncomfortable things. But we also have to address that you can't hurt people.
Right.
Either,
and I think that there's a difference between freedom of speech and wanting the rights around freedom of speech because you don't want to be prosecuted or persecuted versus saying something that hurts someone's feelings.
What? I couldn't have found a better way to put into words what I was trying to say.
Trust me, this is coming from a journalism major here. So I'm all about my freedom of speech. But at the same time, like, there's a really big difference between, I hate it so much when people talk about, oh, I never intended to offend you. It's like, let's not mix up intent and impact. Intent does not dictate impact. I could say some things to you and have no intention of hurting your feelings. That has nothing to do with how I just made you feel.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
but you also have to expect that there's some people are going to be ignorant. You can just see. I personally have just lost all faith in humankind. So when somebody comes up to me, like when I was working at,
you've become the cynic.
Yes, I've become the cynic, and I try really not to, because I have an 8-year-old and I don't want him to pick this up. But
you don't want him to be jaded.
Yeah, he's gonna get it, because I have a hard time when I was working at brands, family-owned appliance company. I have people come up and go, "What's with the leg?" Like, what? Excuse me. I just want to excuse the fuck out of me. Start over. And there were some times that I had to tell somebody. I've swore at customers in that job. Thank God it was a family company, and they stood behind me for at least that, because they were completely out of line. And seriously, fuck them. We don't want your business. Not that circumstance, but it's just like they come up. What's with the leg? Or like, what's going on? What happened? You know, people don't mean to, and then sometimes it comes from a good place too, a good ignorant place.
There's just this weird thing though, where people feel like they can just ask anything.
They do feel like it's okay.
They have the right to just be nosy as fuck and just like start leaning into people's space, and it's like, I actually don't need to talk to you about anything going on with me at all. Like,
just lean right in.
Like, yeah.
They just lean right into that.
Like, if you see me fall over, ask me how I'm doing. But like, you know, it's just, it's frustrating. And I think, I don't know, we could go off on a tangent on this, but.
Oh,
yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, we've only got a few more minutes left, but we're usually around an hour and 30. I mean, the thing that it just drives me nuts with a lot of people is just when they look, specifically to kind of almost seems like to ignite the conversation, where they're like,
they're antagonizing.
They're antagonizing, but without they're making up the story. Well. Now they're banning cheeseburgers. AOC wants to ban all cheeseburgers. That doesn't happen. Nobody's really saying that's not exactly what's going on. And it's just this stupid, the liberals want to take away air travel and all of this stuff. And it's just like, no, that's not necessarily what they're saying. And I understand that, from a libertarian perspective, that not all of it's 100% feasible right away, but that's not what they said. Where's the logic come in?
Yeah, they're just trying to be hyperbolic, and they're just trying to get people stirred up.
To get talking points. So that's now talking points and not conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Stop poking yourself.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop doing it. I just think that's absurd, because I think that they're doing it with these issues too, about like gender rights and stuff too. It's the now everybody's going to be expecting everybody. It's like, no,
Who
just stop
cares?
being a dick.
It's like. Do you refer to me as Ms. Hicks or Mrs. Hicks or like? So
Right,
what is?
right.
Where does that?
It's so funny. I
that-
was just having
that
this conversation the
suffix
other
come
day.
in, right? Or doctor.
Yeah.
Versus just calling someone, hey, Mr. Whoever. It's like, it's doctor. You know.
So I made
It's
the
like,
mistake of
who
calling
cares?
somebody sir, and it wasn't a sir, and I felt horrible about it when I was selling appliances. I'm like, we were really busy, and I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, I'll be right with you. We were really.
I mean, I think that's happened. That's happened to the best of us, though, right?
I'm not
Like,
a sir,
say,
and I'm
oh,
like, oh
congratulations.
god.
When are you doing? They're like, I just had like too much tacos. Like,
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're not really pregnant or something. Like, I think
Oh,
people
man.
have had like those moments.
Yeah. That was the
But-
word. I felt crushed because I felt so genuinely, horrifically bad because I was just like, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. Well, because I said, I'm sorry, sir. Sorry for the wait. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not a sir. I'm like, excuse me, sir. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
But at
god,
least you
I wanted to
apologized.
cry. I did, and I think, I get a ridiculous deal on that refrigerator,
Yeah.
and she still bought the extended service and all that. And I think it turned out well, but it was just like,
Was it
Oh
somebody
my
who
gosh,
was gender nonconforming, or was this like
I
someone who wasn't
I
trying
think I don't know.
Okay.
It was an older woman,
Okay.
and I think she just had a shaved head, and I didn't.
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't putting
Didn't
two
get,
and
like,
two
a good look
together
before you said
because I was
something,
rushing
yeah.
around because we were super busy.
Yeah.
I just felt like the worst person in the world to the point where I wanted to go back and cry and just die inside.
what?
Like it was such a horrible feeling inside. I felt like such a horrible piece of shit.
I know, but
And it was-
sometimes, and I do a lot
It's
of
completely on accident.
it, whenever you talk about like racial equity work, especially in New Hampshire and predominantly white space, or you talk about any kind of equity work, a phrase that I love that I picked up from a workshop once was be humble and be ready to fumble. Like, just know that when you're having these conversations, especially as like a very privileged person, like I'm a female, but I'm white, I'm able-bodied, I'm financially privileged. Finally, lived with that one for a long time.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you're gonna trip up and you're gonna say something wrong, and I think it's the ability to admit that and to own that and to sit in that space. And when you do say something and you mess up, don't get defensive. When
Right.
someone comes out and says like, ugh, like that was like, maybe don't say that next
Don't
time, right?
backtrack on it.
Like,
and,
yeah, like,
just
and I
like-
just, it's crazy because I've talked to people in this area who literally were someone that was out with coworkers once, and this person was a person of color, and the person said to them, oh yeah, well, what do you want to drink? You get these beers, and they go, and he grabbed like the watermelon beer, and they were like, of course you want the watermelon beer. And it was like the most racist thing ever. And yet it's coming from this white guy who thinks it's funny. And it's like, I've never in my life had that experience. Like, I've never personally had that experience where someone has immediately summed me up to a stereotype. Well, I have as a woman from a gender perspective, but it's like, that's the kind of stuff where
yeah.
you want to give people more credit, and sometimes in things that we've moved so far past, this stage in the game. But that's why people that's why white people need to talk about it, because white people don't grow up having to talk about race.
No.
And when you're able-bodied, you don't grow up talking about disability. And when you're when you're
true.
born here, you don't
Same.
think about immigration. You don't
And I
think
still,
about,
you know how often I feel like I didn't, like, I hate using this thing because I feel uncomfortable because of it. And like so many times that like just having the cane or whatever is just like, it took me so long to just get comfortable and just like say, because
Just
I'm a
own it.
very fuck it
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
I've always owned it, but it took me there's still a buffer. And I think it was more so because of the retail selling appliances and having people being like, oh, what happened? What's going on with your leg? What's up with the... It's both ankles and none of your fucking business. But without saying it like
"Get off my
that.
ship."
Yeah.
It's like they don't understand, and some of them are trying to be nice, but it's just like, dude, you're here to buy appliances. What do you want?
yeah,
It's it's gonna die in 7 to 12 years. What do you want? Unless you buy a Speed Queen washer. So that's I think that puts us right towards the end of the podcast. We want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having
It
me.
was a really,
fun.
really great time, and I think we
Yeah.
got some really substantive discussion. I mean, we're kind of all over the place, but
That's okay. It was
but this
fun.
is really great, and we might try to reach back out to you and have you come
Yeah.
back on, because I think it's a great a great way to get kind of the temperature of the job
Mm-hmm.
climate. And despite what the labor guys up at the top say, I'd really like to hear from somebody who's in it and
Mm-hmm.
understands
For sure. It's
what
pretty
the fuck
important,
they're talking
'cause
about.
It seems to be
It's a pretty big
changing a
deal.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Year
No,
to year,
totally.
month to
Absolutely.
month.
And once you guys get your like VoIP stuff all set up and you
Yeah.
can take calls and all that,
Yes.
like if I honestly, I love doing free Q&As because I think some people when they, like if people email questions in or if you have like
Yep.
spot on the spot questions, I try to do it on Instagram live as much as possible
That's
because it's free
perfect.
and it's
Yeah.
remote and people can kind of just type in questions
So
because sometimes you just have a quick question.
we actually
you know?
have that on the list of things we've got to discuss
Yeah,
because
I'm happy
we've
to.
got because we've got an author that we want to have on that's pretty notable, but is it's probably easier for voice IP unless towards the fall it's easier. So that's what we're leaning towards.
Fun.
But the whole aspect of like what you're saying, having callers call in to ask
Yeah.
questions, Q&A,
Or
I
even
think
just
that would be a
being
really
like,
great idea.
hey, we're going to be talking about jobs next week. If
Yeah.
you've got a question about your job search, like send us an email or whatever. And then like we just,
Bingo.
we read it off and answer it on the cast. Yeah.
For sure.
Happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you,
and
guys.
thank you, listeners,
no
for
problem.
listening and listening to our abstract tangents.
Yeah,
We'll
dude.
see you next week.